What happens when you take the most important collection of Patek Philippe vintage shaped timepieces and you put them in a book? That's what we're about to discover today. So buckle up and get ready to see some amazing watches and a very cool book. You very well know that Italy is possibly the most important country when it comes to vintage watches, and especially when it comes to vintage Patek Philippe timepieces. And if you want to go even more niche, to shaped watches. What is a shaped watch at first? A shaped watch is any specific watch that is not of a round shape. And for us, gli orologi di forma, that's how we call them, have a special place in our heart because they resonate with our aesthetic point of views, our taste, our way of expressing ourselves and our style. And this is exactly where this book is coming from. So this is a project that came from the mind of Giovanni Domenichini, who's a very important collector of watches, of course, but obsessed, we can say, with shaped timepieces. And the 24 pieces we have in front of us today are exactly a part of his collection, which inspired him to create a book dedicated to shaped watches. And among all the brands that have created shaped watches, we know for sure that Patek Philippe has been one of the most creative ones on one hand, but also one of the most cultural ones, we can say. There is a culture about Patek Philippe shaped timepieces, which is still going on nowadays. If you think about it, the ellipse, which is not present here nor mentioned in the book, but all these kind of watches, even the modern times Nautilus is a shaped watch in the end. But what we're about to discover today is something completely different, which goes from the 1910s, from, let's say, the late 1950s. But could he do it alone? He could have, I think, but we're Italians, so we love to be social. We love to be friends with people who share the same interests we do. And we have a special connection with watches, especially here in Bologna. And so the book was born to create a lineup, a theoretical lineup somehow, but the best lineup possible of shaped timepieces, putting together Giovanni Domenichini's collection alongside with Auro Montanari, Sandro Fratini, Davide Parmegiani, and Marco Minoccheri. The book I have in front of me is the final copy of what you're about to discover for yourself in September. That is when the book is finally coming out. And of course, it is a coffee table book with a beautiful size. And even more than that, we do have an amazing photography of 85 timepieces that are basically connected through taste and showcased almost in a chronological order, but more in a logical order. I'm not going through the whole book with you, but what I can say about the book is the fact that first and foremost, it presents you every single watch with very qualitative but also credible photos, because a lot of books have polished photos, but when you pick up a watch in the flesh, in the metal, you do have all this patina on the gold due to aging. You have a specific sapore of the dial itself, showing again patina or a little bit of imperfections sometimes. And this is exactly what they wanted to convey to you with the book. So getting the exact feeling of the watch when you have it in your hands. And this is the main reason why this book to me is very special. First, because again, it shows you timepieces that you don't see every day, which we're gonna delve deeper in a few seconds. But also, you do have a very hands-on approach to the watches. As I said, 85 timepieces with a lot of anecdotes about these timepieces, the explanation of why some of them, a family of watches and so on, is special and why it is in a book, some anecdotes from the various collectors, and in the end, a full table of all the watches displayed in the book. Of course, telling you about the metal, the reference number, the production year, and the nickname, which is what we're going to focus today. So at the moment, the book is not available to purchase already, but you can pre-order it on their Instagram account. I'm leaving the link right here. It's FORMA Watches. And now it's time to delve deeper in the collection. I remember being a kid myself and looking at watches on the internet, and if I think it straight, I actually was as well passionate and very intrigued by Patek Philippe shaped watches, because I've always felt like they are kind of the highest peak of the DNA of the brand. They represent the moment in which the brand was super creative, daring, and attached to showcasing something more than just a brand name, a brand model, or just a overall vibe, but more like a precise aesthetic, which often comes from interesting facts. And talking about interesting facts, something that is mentioned very well in the book by Mr. Goldberger, a good friend, Auro Montanari, is the Gondolo. The Gondolo, I find the Gondolo to be an almost misunderstood, forgotten reference by the majority of collectors of my age. But it is A, a fascinating timepiece, B, a very aesthetically appealing one, and C, it's possibly the coolest story of them all. We're not gonna tell you the whole story about the watch, even though we should, but to be completely honest with you, seeing a Gondolo with this quality on my wrist today is something that made me realize the importance of this watch. As you might know, the Gondolo comes from a liaison, the one between the Swiss Precision with Patek Philippe, of course, and we can say the other one with the creativity of the Brazilians. Gondolo was somehow the first watch club in the world. It was an organization somehow. It was much more than a name on a watch. And of course, this is what makes it special to me as a model and as a family. But the example we have here is something truly special and unique. First, look at how it wears on the wrist. And second, look at the cure of the watch. We have exploded numerals going perfectly through the design of the dial and case. So as you can see, the 11, 1, 5, and 7 adapt perfectly with the aesthetic of the watch, going all the way to the end corner of the case. Plus, we do have this amazing lugs and a bracelet that fits the watch perfect, being a work of art of itself. Watches like this are in private collections, but I feel like what the book is about is to spread the world and to spread the beauty of such watches, not just to make them appreciated, because they are already actually, but to really tell the people why they are special. Because when you have a watch like this in your hands, you can really explore it. You look at the chemin de fer, oval shaped in the middle. You look at the full Patek Philippe & Co. signature following that, chronometro Gondolo, the crown, the hallmarks, the writing on the back. This whole thing is really special. So once again, this is the reference 10 that was produced between 1917 and 1932 for Rio de Janeiro, and this is basically what you'll find at the beginning of the book. But today we try to select some watches for you going into the culture, meaning we're gonna talk about nicknames. The Gondolo was the first one, and the second one I'd like to explore comes in two totally different watches, both bearing reference 139, and both being produced from 1933, but they're the driver. I think you know the driver watches from other brands than Patek Philippe, and I had no idea a Patek Philippe driver watch existed. But today, here in Bologna, I discovered that actually Patek Philippe made a driver watch too. So what is a driver watch? It's basically a watch that wants you to drive smoothly without having to pull away your hand to look at your wrist. And how to do so? Well, basically creating a watch shaped in order to stay on the side of your wrist, which is why this beautiful 139 is shaped in this super odd way. We're used to orologi di forma, shaped watches that are vertically aligned, so they basically adapt to your wrist on a regular basis. But when it comes to driver watches, you want the exact opposite. In fact, this watch that actually, if you look at it, has a closing system that is really mental, is meant to sit on the side of your wrist, and it actually does it perfectly. Another great beauty of shaped watches, honestly, apart from the variety of bracelets they can come with, which is actually not something often from Patek, but from single producers of bracelets that were basically artisans all around Switzerland and the rest of Europe, is the attention to detail that was put in these watches. If you look at this specific driver in white gold, you can see that not only the case is shaped like the top of a house somehow, but the crystal as well has 3 different facets that align perfectly with the case. And this is the biggest difference, in my opinion, between these kind of watches and the vast majority of the watches you have in production nowadays. The fact that they were thought out to be like they were designed. So nothing was left to chance. Everything was thought out and was done in the best way in order to obtain a very beautiful looking watch, which in this case was also a useful timepiece. But bearing the same reference, and this is, trust me, the first time I see a watch like this in person as well, we also find this amazing two-tone white and yellow gold Patek Philippe wristwatch, which is not a driver in my opinion, because it's a little bit too vertical for the side of your wrist, but this was just to show you the different, like the array of different shapes you can find in the vintage Patek Philippe production. That's why often when people ask me, okay, but what's your favorite brand? And you know I'm a big Cartier fan. I find Patek Philippe to be somehow even more exquisite than Cartier, because everybody knows Cartier for shapes, but just the good ones know Patek Philippe for shapes. And this is why I'm super proud of being among the first people to talk to you about the book, which, by the way, I'm thankful for, to all the team behind the book, because this is really culture, and culture is what I always aim to create. So without going too long on this, look at the watch. The side of the case, the shape of the crystal, the shape of the lugs. It's really a watch that could not go unnoticed, and that you, I think, would spend hours and hours appreciating on your wrist, from the different indices to the little cuts between a part and the other on the lugs. Everything on this watch is not left to chance, plus the conditions of a lot of the watches mentioned in the book are incredible. But let's go to a bit of the icons of Patek Philippe shaped watches. I think this could be the most iconic watch of them all. We call it Cinesino in Italy, you can call it top hat There's a lot going on, but we're always talking about a 1450 reference number produced in the 40s. In this case, my favorite example of Giovanni's collection, the Freccero signed pink on pink. Pink on pink in Patek Philippe is exquisite, typically. And when you pair this with the conditions on this watch, with the purity of the dial and with the double signature that, for those who don't know, is something sought after in the world of collectors, with the Calatrava cross, because they were watches destined to a specific retailers. And so that's the watch we chose to give you an idea of the variety of this production. If you look at the watch, it reminds you of a top hat, a cappello a cilindro, how we call it, but I feel like this can be the most Italian watch of them all, because you have a little bit of oddity in the shape, you have a lot of elegance when you put it on the wrist, and you have one of these watches that really are amazingly good when on the wrist. Still going on with a bit of the variety, I've never heard before of the Viking. What was the Viking? The Viking basically is a watch that comes from kind of a tradition of Patek Philippe, the one of creating fancy lugs that you will for sure find in the book. You can find the Flame, which has kind of like flame-shaped lugs, but if you change slightly the lug, you have the Viking from the horns on the Viking helmets. And this is also the beauty of this kind of collecting, because once again, FORMA watches, it's not just about a brand, it's not just about a type of watches, but I feel it's all about a philosophy of collecting, which is the quest for beautiful shapes, the quest for variety, always looking at quality and always looking at an historical time frame that was the epitome of Patek Philippe. And I feel like the Viking can be one of the most representative ones of them all. And the most important aspect of this watch, which is why we selected it, is the fact that you can find patina. Italians are not scared of patina when it comes with conditions. And to find a watch like this, with this gold patina on such a shape, I feel like it's an honor, because it's really one of those watches that if you're not a passionate guy, you would possibly not care about, but once you've tried them, they cannot be forgotten and they live rent-free in your brain. Just to go quickly, we have a Mickey Mouse, basically a Topolino, reminding you of the famous Disney character, which is a pretty simple watch, but once again with an unmistakable cure for detail on this one, and a beautiful bracelet that is also of inspiration for collectors, I believe, because you can really have a closer look. It's almost a lookbook as well. We have the Manta, that is Italian for stingray, which you can very well see where the name is from, because in Italy, we like to pair watches with other aspects of life, which is what makes our philosophy of collecting special. Bearing reference 2554 in white gold with this amazing Patek Philippe signed bracelets. We do have the Pagoda, one of my favorite watches of them all. Double signed Houseman, once again, pink on pink, with a beautiful patina, and here the devil is in the detail because the name comes from the side of the case. So it's really another way of approaching watchmaking. Everybody likes their own, but I feel like this attention to detail that is also testified by the names is among the most fascinating ones. But I kept the cherry on top for the end of it all. So if there is one main reason why I should be interested in this book, and I feel like you should be too, is about the watches you're about to see, because I feel like shaped watches are known to the vast majority of collectors, but asymmetrical shaped watches play a game of their own, and it's the first time in my life I see 6 different asymmetrical shaped watches all in one place, and all from the collaboration between Patek Philippe as a brand, as a manufacturer, as a watchmaker, and Gilbert Albert as the creative mind behind the design of these watches. I've grown up looking at these watches. They're my absolute dream. They are the watches my heart beats for, and seeing a variety of these watches all in one place, all in one book, to me is breathtaking and priceless. I brought to you two different examples just to show you the variety of different shapes he created, because to me he was on his own the king of shapes. And these two to me are very special because this watch reminds you of the most known watch from the guy, which also can be found in the book, but it has a different twist, being a little bit shorter and a little bit more odd, and on the other hand, possibly the most representative watch of them all. And to me, the most intriguing one, because it's possibly the least known of them all, always with a great size on the wrist, always with this beautiful, not just asymmetry, but also kind of different use and different conception of the space. Not just the space on your wrist, which, if you look at the strap, is kind of obvious, but also the space itself. It reminds me a bit of Umberto Boccioni and so on. So to me, all these watches are pieces of art, but the Gilbert Albert production, well, has a different game of its own. And if you look closer to the book, you can see that on the cover there is, in fact, a Gilbert Albert timepiece. I decided to talk to you about just a fraction of the watches mentioned in the book. Among the 24 we brought here today, we spoke about just less than a dozen of them, and we could go on for days because every single watch in this book is here for a reason. The reason being, basically, it's aesthetic on one hand, the power to evocate something, but also its historical relevance, because all of these watches are super rare, are very difficult to be found in this condition. If you think that watches like this one are more than 100 years old, which is very much for a wristwatch, and finding them in almost pristine condition is really the quest for impossible. So I didn't want to bother you with every single detail of the watches, and I didn't want to spoiler too much about the book, but this was just to give you an idea, an overview, a global look at what you can find here, hoping to interview every single person in the book and hoping to delve deeper inside every single watch, which is what I wish you could do too. But this was just to present you such a masterpiece. So if you're interested in vintage watches of every sort, if you're interested in peculiar shaped watches, or if you're just a Patek Philippe fan, I find FORMA SHAPE to be among the best executed books of them all, if you really want to have your own point of view and if you want to discover someone else's point of view into watch collecting and into the golden era of Patek Philippe. Therefore, please stay tuned for what is coming in September for the unveiling of the book. We're gonna entertain you with much more than you've seen today. Have a follow on the Instagram page for more watches, and, well, let me know which one of these watches was your favorite. Of course, a huge thank you to Giovanni, to Fulvio, and to Vincenzo for having me here today and helping me out with this video and much more. See you very soon on AM Casa for more high-end watchmaking, and enjoy your passion.